When Elena Morales walked into Roman DeLuca's office on her first day, she expected a job interview, not to be grabbed by Manhattan's most dangerous man and kissed like her life depended on it. One moment she was clutching her resume. The next, she was pinned against his chest while he announced to his stone-faced father that she was his girlfriend. The lie should have ended there. Instead, it became the most dangerous contract she'd ever signed, one that didn't require her signature, only her survival. If you want to see how a fake kiss turns into a real empire, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The elevator doors opened onto the 47th floor with a whisper that felt too quiet for what was waiting on the other side. Elena Morena stepped out, her heels clicking against marble so polished she could see her reflection in it. The hallway stretched ahead like something out of a dream, or a nightmare, depending on how the next hour went. Floor-to-ceiling windows lined one side, offering a view of Manhattan that made her feel small and significant all at once. On the other side, dark wood paneling and tasteful art that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. She adjusted the strap of her bag and told herself to breathe. This was it. Her first real job since moving to the city. Executive assistant to Roman DeLuca, a name that carried weight in circles she'd only read about in newspapers. The job posting had been vague, demanding role, discretion required, competitive salary, but the pay was triple what she'd been making at her last temp position. She'd sent in her resume on a whim, never expecting a callback. Now she was here, and the nerves were starting to claw their way up her throat. A woman in a sleek black suit appeared from a side door, her expression neutral but assessing. "Miss Morales?" "Yes." Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Follow me." They walked in silence, past offices with frosted glass doors and conference rooms where men in expensive suits talked in low voices. The woman, her name tag read Claire, moved with the kind of efficiency that suggested she'd been doing this for years. Elena tried to match her pace, tried to look like she belonged here. Claire stopped in front of a set of double doors at the end of the hall. "Mr. DeLuca is expecting you." Elena nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. Claire knocked once, then pushed the door open without waiting for a response. The office was massive. A corner suite with windows on two sides, a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black walnut, and shelves lined with books that probably weren't just for show. The space smelled faintly of leather and something else, something sharp and clean, like expensive cologne. And standing by the window, silhouetted against the midday sun, was Roman DeLuca. He turned when she entered, and Elena felt the air shift. She'd seen photos of him online, press shots from charity galas, blurry paparazzi images outside upscale restaurants. None of them had prepared her for the reality. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and a jawline that could cut glass. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Dark, calculating, and entirely too aware. "Miss Morales." His voice was smooth, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised to command a room. "You're early." Yes, I didn't want to be late." "Good instinct." He gestured to one of the chairs in front of his desk. "Sit." She sat. He didn't. Instead, he moved around the desk, leaning against the edge of it, arms crossed. He studied her with the same intensity she imagined he used when deciding whether to close a deal or walk away from one. "You've read the job description," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Then you know this isn't a typical assistant role. I don't need someone to fetch coffee or schedule lunch meetings. I need someone who can think, adapt, and keep their mouth shut when necessary." Elena straightened in her chair. "I can do that." "Can you?" His gaze didn't waver. "Because once you're in, you're in. There's no halfway. You'll see things, hear things that most people don't, and you'll be expected to handle it without flinching." She met his eyes, refusing to look away. "I'm not here to flinch, Mr. DeLuca. I'm here to work." For the first time, something that might have been approval flickered across his face. "Good." He straightened, moving back around the desk. "We'll start with—" The door slammed open. Elena jumped, her heart lurching into her throat. A man strode in, older, silver-haired, with the same dark eyes as Roman, but harder, colder. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe, and he carried himself like someone who'd never been told no in his life. Behind him, a woman followed, tall, blonde, with the kind of beauty that came from good genes and better surgeries. She wore a white dress that clung to her like a second skin, and her smile was all teeth. Roman's expression didn't change, but Elena saw the way his jaw tightened. "Father," his voice was flat. "I wasn't expecting you." "Clearly." The older man's gaze swept over Elena, dismissive, before returning to his son. "We need to talk." "I'm in the middle of something." "It can wait." The man gestured to the woman beside him. "You remember Vivian?" Vivian stepped forward, her smile widening. "Roman, it's been too long." Roman didn't move. "Has it?" "Don't be rude," his father snapped. "Vivian's family has been very patient. It's time we finalize the arrangement." Elena's stomach dropped. "Arrangement?" Roman's expression was stone. "I told you I'm not interested. What you're interested in is irrelevant." His father's voice was ice. "This is about the family, about securing our position. You will marry Vivian, and you will do it before the end of the year." The silence that followed was deafening. Elena wanted to disappear. She didn't belong here, didn't belong in the middle of whatever family drama was unfolding. She started to stand, to excuse herself, but before she could move, Roman's hand shot out. He grabbed her wrist, pulling her to her feet, and then, before she could process what was happening, before she could breathe, he kissed her. Not a gentle kiss, not a polite press of lips. This was claiming, possessive, the kind of kiss that left no room for doubt. His hand slid to the back of her neck, holding her in place, and for a moment the world narrowed to just him, his mouth on hers, his body against hers, the faint taste of coffee on his tongue. When he pulled back, her knees were shaking. Roman turned to his father, his arm sliding around her waist like it belonged there. "I'm already taken." The older man's face went purple. "What?" "This is Elena." Roman's voice was calm, almost casual. "My girlfriend." Elena's brain short-circuited. "Girlfriend?" Vivian's smile had frozen on her face, her eyes narrowing into slits. Roman's father looked like he was about to explode. "You expect me to believe that?" "Believe what you want." Roman's grip on Elena tightened, a silent warning. "But I'm not marrying Vivian, or anyone else you've picked out." "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" Roman's tone sharpened. "You walk into my office, uninvited, with a woman I've made it clear I have no interest in, and expect me to just go along with it? I'm done playing your games, father." His father's jaw worked, fury radiating off him in waves. But when he spoke again, his voice was controlled, dangerous. "We'll see about that." He turned on his heel and strode out, Vivian following with one last venomous glance at Elena. The door slammed shut. Elena stood frozen, Roman's arms still around her waist. And then reality crashed in. She shoved him away, stumbling back. What the hell was that? Roman straightened his tie, his expression unreadable. "A necessary complication." "Necessary?" She stared at him, anger flooding through the shock. "You just told your father I'm your girlfriend." "Yes." "Without asking me." "There wasn't time to ask." Elena laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "You are out of your mind." "Possibly." He moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. "But it's done now." "It's not done. You can't just—" She stopped, pressing her hands to her temples. "I came here for a job, not to be dragged into whatever twisted family politics you've got going on. And you'll still have the job." He turned to face her. "In fact, I'm doubling your salary." That stopped her cold. "What?" "Consider it hazard pay." His tone was matter-of-fact. "My father won't let this go easily. He'll dig into your background, test you, try to find leverage. If you're going to survive this, you'll need to be compensated accordingly." Elena's head was spinning. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious when it comes to money." He crossed his arms. "Here's the situation. My father has been trying to marry me off for the last 2 years. Every woman he picks is the same, connected, ambitious, and utterly uninterested in anything beyond the DeLuca name. I've refused every arrangement, and he's running out of patience. So you dragged me into it. I gave us both an out." His gaze locked on hers. You play along for a few months. We make public appearances, attend events, convince my family that this is real. Once they back off, we stage a breakup, and you walk away with enough money to do whatever you want. And if I say no, then you leave, and I find someone else." He shrugged. "But you're already involved. My father saw you. Vivian saw you. If you walk now, they'll assume you're a liability I need to manage. And trust me, you don't want to be on that list." The threat was implicit but clear. Elena wanted to scream or cry, or both. Instead, she forced herself to think. She needed this job, needed the money. And Roman was right. She was already in it now, whether she liked it or not. If she walked away, there was no telling what his father might do to protect the family's interests. "How long?" she asked finally. 3 months, maybe 4. "And after that?" "After that, you're free. Clean break, no strings." She searched his face for any sign of deception, but found only cold calculation. "I want it in writing," she said. "Everything. The salary, the timeline, the terms of the breakup." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "Done. And I'm not sleeping with you. Wasn't planning on it." Elena took a breath, weighing her options. It was insane, reckless, the kind of decision that could blow up in her face in 100 different ways. But the alternative was going back to her cramped apartment and her temp job and wondering if she'd just thrown away the opportunity of a lifetime. "Fine," she said. "I'll do it." Roman extended his hand. She shook it, and the deal was made. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Claire reappeared to show Elena to her new office, a smaller space down the hall from Roman's, but still nicer than anywhere she'd worked before. There was a desk, a computer, and a stack of files that needed organizing. Normal assistant things, except nothing about this situation was normal. Roman kept his word. By the time she left that evening, a contract had been drawn up, signed, and filed away in his private safe. The terms were clear. 3 months of pretending to be his girlfriend in exchange for a salary that made her eyes water and a severance package that would set her up for a year after it was over. It should have felt like a win. Instead, it felt like she'd just signed a deal with the devil. The first test came 2 days later. Elena was at her desk, reviewing a spreadsheet, when Claire appeared in the doorway. "Mr. DeLuca wants to see you." Elena's stomach tightened, but she followed without comment. Roman's office was empty when she arrived, but she heard voices from the adjoining conference room. She hesitated, then pushed the door open. Roman stood at the head of a long table, surrounded by men in suits. But it was the woman at the far end who made Elena's breath catch. She was older, maybe 70, with silver hair pulled into an elegant chignon and eyes that could strip paint off a wall. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than Elena's car, and she radiated the kind of authority that didn't need to be announced. Roman's grandmother. It had to be. The woman's gaze locked on Elena, sharp and assessing. "So," she said, her voice low and smooth, "this is the girl." Roman gestured for Elena to come closer. "Nonna, this is Elena Morales." "Elena, my grandmother, Lucia DeLuca." Elena forced herself to move, to cross the room and offer her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. DeLuca." Lucia took her hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Is it?" It wasn't a question. The room felt too small, too hot. Elena was acutely aware of every eye on her, every unspoken judgment hanging in the air. Lucia released her hand but didn't look away. "My grandson tells me you've been seeing each other for some time." Elena's mind raced. How long was some time? They hadn't discussed details, hadn't coordinated their story. "A few months," Roman said smoothly, stepping in before she could answer. "We kept it quiet." "Why?" Lucia's tone was deceptively mild. "Because I knew what would happen if we didn't." Roman's expression didn't change. "And I was right." Lucia's lips thinned. "Your father is concerned." "My father is always concerned." "Don't be flippant." Her voice sharpened. "This family has a reputation to maintain. If you're serious about this girl, then she needs to be vetted, properly." Elena's pulse spiked. "Vetted?" Roman's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine." Lucia's gaze returned to Elena. "You'll join us for dinner on Sunday. The entire family will be there." It wasn't an invitation, it was a command. Elena looked at Roman, who gave a barely perceptible nod. Of course, Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'd be honored. Lucia studied her for another long moment, then turned to Roman. We'll see. She swept out of the room, the men following in her wake. When the door closed, Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. What just happened? She asked. Roman loosened his tie, the first sign of tension she'd seen from him all day. You just got invited into the lion's den. Your grandmother runs this family more than my father ever did. He poured himself a drink from the bar in the corner, then offered her one. She shook her head. If she doesn't approve, this whole plan falls apart. So what do we do? He downed the whiskey in one swallow. We prepare. You need to know the family history, the key players, the dynamics. If she tests you, and she will, you can't hesitate. Elena's chest tightened. I didn't sign up for this. Yes, you did. His gaze was steady, unyielding. The moment you shook my hand, she wanted to argue, but he was right. She'd made the deal. Now she had to live with it. The next few days were a crash course in everything DeLuca. Roman drilled her on names, relationships, family businesses. She learned that his father, Dante, had taken over the empire from Lucia's late husband and had spent the last 20 years expanding it into new territories. That Roman's two younger brothers were working in the European branches, and his sister had married into another powerful family in Boston. She learned that the DeLucas weren't just wealthy, they were connected. Politicians, judges, business moguls, everyone owed them something, and they never forgot a debt. And she learned that Roman himself was a mystery even to his own family. He'd taken control of the Manhattan operations 5 years ago and had transformed them from underground dealings into legitimate enterprises, real estate, private equity, high-end security firms. On paper, it was all legal. But Elena wasn't naive. She knew that empires like this weren't built on paperwork alone. Why me? She asked one evening after another marathon session of names and faces. They were in his office, the city glittering below them. Roman looked up from the files he'd been reviewing. What? Why did you pick me? You could have grabbed anyone that day, your secretary, a random employee, anyone. So why me? He was quiet for a long moment. You didn't flinch, he said finally. When I kissed you, when I made the announcement, you didn't panic. You got angry, yes, but you didn't fall apart. That's rare. Elena didn't know what to say to that. Roman set down the file. Most people see me and see power, money, danger. They either try to get close because of it or stay far away. You saw a problem and started calculating your options. That's useful. So I'm useful. Yes. He didn't apologize for it. And if you play this right, you'll come out of it with more than you walked in with. That's the deal. It wasn't comforting, but it was honest. Elena stood, gathering her notes. I should go. It's late. I'll have a car take you home. I can take the subway. No. His tone left no room for argument. From now on, you're with me. That means you're a target. You don't go anywhere alone unless I clear it first. The weight of it settled over her like a blanket. She wasn't just playing a role. She was stepping into Roman's world with all its dangers and consequences. And there was no going back. Sunday came too fast. Elena stood in front of her closet, staring at the handful of dresses she owned. None of them felt right. Too casual, too cheap, too obvious. Her phone buzzed. Roman, car will be there at 5. Wear something formal but not flashy, and don't be late. She wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, she pulled out the one black dress she had that didn't scream struggling assistant and prayed it would be enough. The car arrived exactly on time. Elena climbed into the back, her nerves jangling like live wires. Roman was already inside, dressed in a dark suit that made him look even more imposing than usual. He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. You look fine, he said. Thanks, she said dryly. That's exactly what every woman wants to hear. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. You'll do better than fine, Huss. Just remember what we practiced. Family history, names, don't insult anyone, don't contradict you. She ticked them off on her fingers. Anything else? Yes. His gaze locked on hers. Don't let them see you're scared. Her heart thudded in her chest. The drive took 40 minutes, winding through the city and into the outskirts, where estates sat behind iron gates and manicured lawns. The DeLuca house was at the end of a long driveway, a sprawling mansion that looked like something out of a movie. Elena's mouth went dry. Roman must have seen her expression because he leaned closer. "Breathe. You've got this." She wasn't sure if he was reassuring her or himself. They were greeted at the door by a butler, an actual butler, who led them through a marble foyer into a dining room that could have seated 20. The table was already set with crystal and china, and the room smelled faintly of roasted meat and expensive wine. And standing near the fireplace, waiting, was the entire DeLuca family. Lucia sat at the head of the table, regal and unreadable. Dante stood beside her, his expression cold, and scattered around the room were faces Elena recognized from Roman's files. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all watching her with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. And then there was Vivienne. She stood near the window, a glass of wine in hand, her smile sharp as a knife. "Roman," Lucia said, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. "Come, introduce your guest." Elena's legs felt like jelly, but she forced herself to walk forward. Roman's hand settled on the small of her back, a silent anchor. "Everyone," he said, his voice calm, "this is Elena." The silence that followed was deafening, and Elena knew, with absolute certainty, that the real test had just begun. Lucia's eyes swept over Elena with the precision of a jeweler examining a stone for flaws. The room held its breath, waiting for the matriarch's verdict, and Elena felt the weight of every gaze like a physical thing pressing against her skin. "So," Lucia said finally, setting down her wine glass with a soft click against the marble mantel, "you work for my grandson." It wasn't a question, but Elena answered anyway. "Yes, I'm his executive assistant." "How convenient." Vivian's voice cut through from the window, dripping with implications. Roman's hand tightened on Elena's back, but his voice remained level. "Elena's qualifications speak for themselves." "Do they?" Dante moved forward, his hands clasped behind his back. He circled Elena like a prosecutor approaching a hostile witness. "Tell me, Ms. Morales, where are you from?" "Queens," Elena said. She refused to let her voice shake. "I was born in Jackson Heights." "And your parents?" "My mother works in a hospital. Administration." She didn't mention that her father had left when she was 12, or that her mother worked double shifts to keep them afloat. Some truths weren't anyone's business. A hospital administrator's daughter. Dante's tone suggested he'd found exactly what he was looking for, proof that she didn't belong. "And you attended?" "City College. I graduated with honors." "City College," he repeated, as if tasting something sour. "Not Columbia. Not NYU." Elena felt heat creep up her neck, but she kept her chin level. "City College gave me a scholarship. I wasn't in a position to turn that down." "How pragmatic." Lucia's voice was unreadable. She moved to the table, gesturing for everyone to sit. "Let's eat. We can continue this interrogation over dinner." The word interrogation hung in the air like smoke as everyone found their places. Roman guided Elena to a seat beside him, directly across from Lucia. Vivienne positioned herself 2 chairs down, close enough to interject but far enough to maintain plausible deniability about her intentions. The first course arrived, some kind of soup that probably had a French name Elena couldn't pronounce. She picked up her spoon and tried to remember which utensil came first in the elaborate place setting. "So tell me," Lucia began, her own spoon moving through the soup with practiced elegance, "how did you and Roman meet?" Elena's mind raced. They'd prepared for this, rehearsed the story. But sitting here under Lucia's sharp gaze, with Dante watching like a hawk and Vivian smirking into her wine, every prepared line felt thin as paper. "The office," Roman said before she could answer. "She interviewed for the assistant position 6 months ago." 6 months. That was the timeline they'd agreed on. Long enough to seem serious, recent enough to explain why no one had heard about it. "And you kept it secret all this time?" An older woman Elena recognized as Roman's aunt, Isabella, leaned forward with interest that seemed genuine rather than hostile. "That must have been difficult." "It was necessary," Roman said. His hand found Elena's under the table, his fingers lacing through hers. The touch was for show, Elena knew, but it steadied her anyway. Given how the family tends to involve itself in my personal life, Dante's jaw tightened. We involve ourselves because someone has to think about the bigger picture. You're not just some ordinary man, Roman. Your choices affect all of us. My choices are my own. Are they? Dante's voice dropped, dangerous. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you made this choice to spite me. The soup course was cleared, replaced by salad. Elena barely tasted it. Maybe if you hadn't shown up with Vivian in tow, Roman said quietly, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Vivian laughed, the sound brittle. Don't blame me for your father's good sense, Roman. Some of us understand what it means to think strategically. Strategic? Roman's smile was sharp enough to cut. Is that what we're calling arranged marriages now? We're calling it survival, Dante snapped. The Castellanos control shipping from here to Miami. An alliance with them would secure our position for the next generation. But you're too stubborn to see past your own pride. Or maybe I'm smart enough to know that treating people like chess pieces is how empires fall apart from the inside. The tension was so thick Elena could barely breathe. She set down her fork, her appetite gone. Lucia raised one hand and the arguing stopped. Just like that. The power in that single gesture was more frightening than any of the shouting had been. Enough, she said. Her gaze moved to Elena. Tell me, child, what do you think of our family? It was a trap. Every possible answer was wrong. If she said they were wonderful, she was lying. If she said anything negative, she'd just sealed her fate. Elena took a breath, searching for something true that wouldn't get her thrown out on her ear. I think, she said slowly, that you care about each other, even when you're fighting, especially when you're fighting. Lucia's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Go on. I grew up in a small apartment with just my mother. We didn't have Sunday dinners or family estates or any of this. Elena gestured to the opulent room around them. But I know what it looks like when people are willing to go to war for the people they love, even if the methods are questionable. The silence that followed felt different, less hostile, more considering. Lucia sat back in her chair. You have a spine, I'll give you that. She has more than that, Roman said. There was something in his voice Elena couldn't quite identify. She has sense, which is more than I can say for most people in this room. Careful, nephew. A younger man Elena didn't recognize, Marco maybe, one of the cousins, spoke up with a smirk. Keep talking like that, and we'll think you actually care about this one. Roman's expression went cold. Watch yourself. Or what? Marco leaned back, cocky. You'll do what exactly? You're not the boss yet, cousin. And until you are, you follow the same rules as the rest of us. Marco. Lucia's voice was soft, but it carried. That's enough. The main course arrived and conversation fragmented into smaller pockets. Elena found herself answering questions from Isabella about her work, about the city, about inconsequential things that felt like a reprieve after the earlier assault. Roman stayed close, his presence a wall between her and the more hostile members of his family. But across the table, Vivian was watching, calculating. After dinner, the men retreated to Dante's study for cigars and business talk that Elena wasn't invited to hear. The women moved to a sitting room that was all velvet furniture and oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. Elena wanted to bolt for the door, but Isabella took her arm gently, guiding her to a settee near the window. Don't let them get to you, Isabella said quietly, pouring tea from a silver service. Dante is protective. Lucia is suspicious of everyone. It's nothing personal. It feels pretty personal, Elena muttered, then winced. She shouldn't have said that out loud, but Isabella just smiled. That's because it is. Roman is the heir, whether Dante wants to admit it or not. Lucia has been grooming him since he was 16. Whoever he chooses to stand beside him will have power, real power. And in this family, power is worth killing for. Elena's blood went cold. Killing? Metaphorically, dear. Isabella patted her hand, but her eyes were serious. Mostly. Across the room, Vivian was holding court with two other women, her laughter too loud, her gestures too animated. But every few minutes, her gaze would slide to Elena, assessing, measuring. She's not going to give up, Elena said. No, Isabella agreed. She won't. The Castellanos don't take rejection well. and Vivian has been planning to be the next Mrs. DeLuca since she was 18. You've disrupted those plans. That makes you an enemy. Great. Elena sipped the tea, which tasted like flowers and regret. Any advice? Isabella considered that. Don't show weakness. Not to her, not to Lucia, not to anyone. In this family, weakness is an invitation. Elena thought about that as the evening dragged on. She smiled when appropriate, answered questions with careful honesty, and tried not to stare at the clock. By the time Roman reappeared, pulling her away with apologies about an early morning meeting, she felt like she'd run a marathon. They didn't speak until they were in the car, the mansion disappearing behind them in the darkness. You did well, Roman said finally. Elena let out a breath she'd been holding for hours. Your family is terrifying. Yes. And Vivian hates me. Also yes. Your father thinks I'm a gold digger. He thinks everyone's a gold digger. Roman loosened his tie, looking tired for the first time since she'd met him. But Lucia didn't throw you out. That's something. She called me child, like I'm 12. She calls everyone that. It's a power move. He turned to look at her, and in the dim light of the passing street lamps, his expression was almost soft. You held your ground. That matters. Elena wanted to feel victorious, but all she felt was exhausted. How long do we have to keep doing this? As long as it takes. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but it was the one she got. The next week passed in a strange rhythm. Elena settled into her actual job, organizing files, managing Roman's schedule, sitting in on meetings where she was expected to take notes and say nothing. But underneath it all was the constant awareness that she was living a lie, and that lie had teeth. Vivian didn't disappear. Instead, she seemed to be everywhere. Elena would look up from her desk to see her in the lobby, chatting with the receptionist. She'd turn a corner and find her in conversation with Claire, all smiles and casual questions about Roman's schedule. It was psychological warfare, and Elena hated how effective it was. She's trying to rattle you, Roman said when Elena mentioned it. They were in his office going over contracts, but Elena's mind kept drifting. It's working. Don't let it. He signed a document without looking up. She wants you to make a mistake, to slip up and prove you don't belong, so don't. Easy for you to say. She's not stalking you. No, she's just shown up at my apartment twice this week. He said it so casually that it took Elena a moment to process. What? She has keys. Her father and mine thought it would be convenient. He finally looked up, his expression unreadable. I had the locks changed. Elena didn't know what to say to that. The casual invasion of it, the assumption that Vivian had a right to access to his private space, made her skin crawl. This is insane, she said finally. Welcome to my world. They worked in silence for a while, the city humming beyond the windows. Elena tried to focus on the spreadsheet in front of her, but her mind kept circling back to the dinner, to Lucia's sharp eyes, to the way Vivian had watched her like a cat watching a mouse. Can I ask you something? Elena said suddenly. Roman glanced up. Depends on the question. Why haven't you just left? All of this, the family, the business, the pressure, you're rich enough to walk away. Start over somewhere else. So why stay? For a long moment, he didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than usual. Because walking away doesn't solve anything. It just leaves room for someone worse to take over. My father, or Marco, or any of the other jackals circling the throne. At least if I'm in charge, I can try to do something better than what came before. And what does better look like? Legitimate businesses, clean money, no one getting hurt because we need to send a message. He set down his pen. My grandfather built this empire on fear and violence. My father maintains it the same way. I'm trying to turn it into something that doesn't require bodies in its foundation. But I can't do that if I walk away. It was the most honest thing he'd said to her since this whole mess started. Elena found herself looking at him differently, not as the cold, calculating boss who dragged her into a scheme, but as someone trying to dig his way out of a hole he'd been born into. That's not going to be easy, she said. No. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. But then, nothing worth doing ever is. The moment broke when Claire knocked on the door, announcing that Roman's next meeting was ready. Elena gathered her things, but as she stood to leave, Roman's voice stopped her. Elena. She turned. Thank you. For Sunday. For not running the moment you saw what you were walking into. She wanted to make a joke, to deflect, but something in his expression made her pause. I made a deal, she said finally. I keep my word. So do I. It felt like a promise, though Elena wasn't sure what he was promising. The days blurred together after that. Elena fell into a routine, work during the day, occasional public appearances with Roman in the evening, a charity gala here, a business dinner there. Each time she wore clothes that Roman's stylist had picked out and smiled for cameras while Roman's hand rested on her back like it belonged there. The media picked up the story quickly. Manhattan's most eligible bachelor, finally off the market. Speculation ran wild about who Elena was, where she'd come from, whether she was pregnant or just lucky. The gossip blogs were merciless, picking apart her background, her education, her appearance. Don't read that garbage, Roman told her when he caught her scrolling through comments on her phone. They were in the back of a car heading to yet another dinner, this one with business partners who wanted to see Roman's new girlfriend for themselves. Hard not to when they're calling me a social climber in 3 different languages. They called my grandmother worse when she married into this family. She's outlived all of them. He took the phone from her hand and pocketed it. Their opinion doesn't matter. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they're calling a... She stopped herself. A what? Elena looked out the window, watching the city slide past. Nothing. But Roman wasn't letting it go. A what, Elena? A whore, she said finally, the word bitter on her tongue. Among other things, apparently I'm either sleeping my way to the top or you're paying me for services rendered. The comment sections can't decide which scenario they prefer. Roman's jaw tightened, and for a moment Elena saw something dangerous flicker across his face. Give me names. What? Names. Accounts. I'll have them shut down by morning. You can't just... She stopped when she saw his expression. You're serious? Completely. Elena didn't know whether to be flattered or frightened. That's not how the internet works. You shut down one account, 3 more pop up. It's not worth it. You are. The words hung between them, unexpected and weighted. Elena's breath caught, and suddenly the car felt too small, too warm. She wanted to say something, to break the tension, but before she could, they were pulling up to the restaurant. The dinner was interminable. Business partners with too much cologne and their wives, who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. Elena played her part, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, nodding along to conversations about markets and acquisitions and things she barely understood. Roman stayed close, his hand finding hers under the table whenever the questions got too pointed. It was almost midnight when they finally escaped. Elena's feet hurt from the heels, and her face ached from holding a smile for hours. She wanted nothing more than to go home, take off this dress, and sleep for 12 hours. But as they walked to the car, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Vivienne. She was alone this time, no entourage or backup, just her in a red dress that probably cost more than Elena's rent, her expression cold and calculating. We need to talk, she said, looking at Elena. Roman moved forward, positioning himself between them. There's nothing to talk about. Not to you. Vivienne's eyes never left Elena. To her. Elena's heart hammered in her chest, but she stepped around Roman. It's fine. Elena? It's fine, she repeated, more firmly. She looked at Vivienne. You want to talk? Let's talk. Vivienne gestured to a side alley, and Elena followed, acutely aware of Roman's tension behind them. The alley was dimly lit, private, the perfect place for a conversation that no one else needed to hear. Vivienne turned to face her, and for the first time the polished mask slipped. What Elena saw underneath was rage, barely contained. You think you're clever, Vivienne said, her voice low and venomous. Playing the innocent, making Roman think you're different. But I know what you are. And what's that? An opportunist. A nobody who saw a chance and took it. Vivienne stepped closer. But here's what you don't understand. Roman isn't yours. He never will be. He's a DeLuca. That means something. That comes with responsibilities, with expectations that someone like you could never fulfill. Someone like me? Elena repeated the words, tasting them. You mean someone who wasn't born into the right family? Someone who had to work for what she has? I mean someone who doesn't belong. And you do? I was raised for this. Vivian's voice was ice. My entire life has been preparation to stand beside someone like Roman. I know how to navigate this world, how to speak its language, how to survive its politics. You're a child playing dress-up, and the moment Roman gets bored, you'll be discarded like yesterday's trash. Elena felt anger surge through her, hot and sharp. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. I know you're temporary, a distraction. And when this little rebellion of his runs its course, he'll come back to reality, to the life he was meant for, to me. You really believe that? I know it. Vivian's smile was cruel. Because I know Roman. He can pretend to be different, pretend he's escaping his family's shadow, but at the end of the day, he is exactly what his blood says he is. And that blood requires a specific kind of partner, not some assistant with student debt and cheap shoes. The dig about her shoes was petty, but it landed. Elena felt the sting of it, the reminder of exactly how far she was from this world. But she also felt something else, anger, real, burning anger. You're right, Elena said quietly. I wasn't raised for this. I don't know all the rules or the politics or how to play these games, but I know one thing you don't. And what's that? Roman chose me. Elena stepped closer, her voice steady. Not because I'm the right family, or the right alliance, or the right strategic move, but because for once in his life, he wanted to choose for himself. And that terrifies you, because if he can choose me, someone who doesn't fit your perfect mold, then everything you've built your identity on is meaningless. Vivian's face went white, then red. You little... Vivian! Roman's voice cut through the alley like a blade. He stood at the entrance, his expression dark. We're leaving, he said to Elena, then turned his gaze to Vivian. And you're going to stop this. All of it. The comments, the stalking, the threats. If you don't, I'll make sure your family knows exactly why this alliance isn't happening. And trust me, they won't be pleased. You wouldn't dare! Try me. The look he gave her was cold enough to freeze blood. Vivian stared at him for a long moment, then turned on her heel and walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement like gunshots. Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking. Roman was beside her in an instant, his hands on her shoulders. Are you okay? I'm fine, but her voice betrayed her, shaking almost as badly as her hands. What did she say to you? Elena laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. Just the truth. That I don't belong, that I'm temporary, that eventually you'll realize what a mistake this all was. Roman's grip tightened. Look at me. She did, reluctantly. His eyes were fierce, burning with an intensity that made her breath catch. You're not temporary. Not to me. Whatever this started as, it's not that anymore. Do you understand? Elena's heart stuttered. Roman, I mean it. What I said in the car earlier, you are worth it. Worth defending, worth protecting. And if Vivian or anyone else comes after you again, they'll answer to me. It should have scared her, the darkness in his voice, the promise of violence. But instead, Elena felt something shift inside her chest, something dangerous and foolish and entirely too real. We should go, she whispered. Roman nodded, but he didn't let go of her shoulders. Not yet. For a moment they just stood there in the dim alley, the city breathing around them, something unspoken hanging in the air between them. Then he stepped back, the moment breaking, and led her to the car. Neither of them spoke on the drive back to her apartment. Elena stared out the window, her mind racing, trying to process what had just happened. Vivian's words, Roman's defense, the strange tension that had wrapped around them like smoke. When they pulled up outside her building, Roman walked her to the door. It had become a habit over the past few weeks, one more piece of the performance. But tonight, it felt different. Thank you, Elena said, fishing for her keys. For back there, you didn't have to... Yes, I did. She looked up at him, this man who'd turned her life upside down with one impulsive kiss, and realized with startling clarity that somewhere along the way, the lines had blurred. The fake relationship had started to feel real, at least to her. And from the way Roman was looking at her right now, standing too close in the yellow glow of her building's security light, maybe to him too. Good night, Roman, she said softly. Good night. but neither of them moved. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Roman's hand came up, his fingers brushing her cheek in a gesture that was nothing like the calculated touches they'd shared in public. This was something else entirely. "Elena," he said, his voice rough. "Don't." She stepped back, her keys clutched tight in her hand. "Whatever you're about to say, don't. Not tonight. Not when I'm already confused about what's real and what's pretend." Understanding flickered across his face, followed by something that might have been regret. "Okay." He stepped back, putting distance between them, and Elena felt the loss of his warmth like a physical thing. She let herself into the building without looking back, but she felt his eyes on her all the way up the stairs. Inside her apartment, Elena leaned against the door and let out a shaky breath. This was supposed to be simple. 3 months of playing pretend, then walking away with enough money to change her life. But nothing about this felt simple anymore. She changed into pajamas, washed her face, and tried to convince herself that she was still in control, that this was still just a job, just a performance. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the way Roman had looked at her in that alley. Like she mattered, like she was real. And that, Elena realized with growing dread, was far more dangerous than anything Vivian could throw at her. The morning after the confrontation with Vivian, Elena woke to 17 missed calls and a text from Roman that simply read, "Don't go into the office today." She sat up in bed, her stomach dropping. Something was wrong. She called him back. He answered on the first ring. "What happened?" she asked, skipping any greeting. "Check the news." His voice was tight, controlled in a way that meant he was furious. "Page 6 specifically." Elena grabbed her laptop, her fingers fumbling over the keys as she pulled up the gossip site. The headline hit her like a fist to the gut. DeLuca's new girl, from rags to riches or gold digger in disguise. Below it was a photo of her and Roman from last night's dinner, but that wasn't the worst part. Beneath that were older photos. Her college ID, a picture of her mother's apartment building, even a shot of her waiting tables at the diner she'd worked at during school. Someone had dug into her entire life and put it on display for the world to dissect. The article was vicious. It painted her as an opportunist who'd seduced her way into Roman's life, a nobody with debts and desperation who saw a meal ticket and grabbed it. There were quotes from anonymous sources close to the family, calling her a distraction, a phase, a mistake. Elena felt sick. "Who did this?" she asked, though she already knew. "Vivian's family has connections at half the major publications in the city." Roman's voice was ice. "But I can't prove it. Not yet." "So what do we do?" "Nothing. You stay home, stay quiet, and let me handle it." "Roman." "I mean it, Elena. These people are sharks. If you try to fight back, they'll twist it into something worse. Let me deal with this." But staying home and staying quiet wasn't in Elena's nature. She spent the morning pacing her apartment, reading and rereading the article until she had it memorized. The comments were even worse than before. Strangers who'd never met her were making judgments about her character, her intentions, her worth as a human being. Her phone rang. Her mother. Elena almost didn't answer, but guilt won out. "Hi, Mama." "Elena." Her mother's voice was tight with worry. "What is this? These articles? Who is this man?" "It's complicated." "Complicated?" "They're calling you terrible things. They're saying you're using him for money." "I know what they're saying." Elena pressed her fingers to her temples. "It's not true. I'm just doing my job." "Your job doesn't usually come with photographers and gossip columnists." Her mother paused. "Is he treating you well? This Roman?" Elena thought about that. About the way he'd defended her in the alley, the way he'd looked at her outside her apartment, the way something had shifted between them that felt real and terrifying all at once. "Yes," she said quietly. "He is." "Then be careful, mija. Men with that much power, they don't play by the same rules as the rest of us. And when things fall apart, it's always people like us who get hurt." After she hung up, Elena sat on her couch and stared at nothing. Her mother was right. She'd walked into this situation with her eyes open, knowing it was temporary, knowing it was a performance. But somewhere along the way, she'd forgotten that, started believing in the fantasy they were selling, and now reality was crashing back in, ugly and sharp. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You should have taken the hint." This is just the beginning. Elena deleted it without responding. Then another came through, and another. By noon, she'd received over 30 messages from blocked numbers, each one more threatening than the last. She called Roman. "I'm getting threats," she said without preamble. "What kind of threats?" She read him a few of the messages, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to keep it steady. Roman swore, low and vicious. "I'm sending security to your apartment. Don't open the door for anyone except them." "You're overreacting." "No, I'm not. Stay where you are." The security team arrived within 20 minutes. Two men in dark suits who positioned themselves outside her building and made it very clear they weren't leaving. Elena felt like a prisoner in her own home, but she also felt safer than she had all day. That evening, Roman showed up in person. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened and his jaw tight with tension. "We need to talk," he said. Elena let him in. He stood in the center of her small living room, looking out of place among her secondhand furniture and the life she'd built on a budget. "I'm ending this," he said. "The arrangement, whatever you want to call it, it's over." Elena's heart stuttered. "What?" "This has gotten too dangerous. I thought I could control it, manage the fallout, but I was wrong. These people, they'll destroy you just to get to me. I can't let that happen." "You can't let it happen?" Anger flared in her chest. "I'm not some damsel you need to protect, Roman. I knew what I was signing up for." "Did you?" He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes was raw. "Did you know they'd dig through your entire life and put it on display? Did you know you'd get death threats from strangers? Because I sure as hell didn't think it would go this far." "So you're just giving up? Letting them win?" "I'm keeping you safe." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "That's more important than any of this." Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what's funny? I actually started to believe this was real, that we were real. But you're just like everyone said. You make decisions for other people and expect them to fall in line. That's not fair, isn't it?" She crossed her arms, fighting the burn of tears behind her eyes. "You pulled me into this without asking. Now you're pulling me out without asking. Do I get a say in any of it, or am I just a piece you move around your board?" Roman's jaw worked. "I'm trying to protect you." "I don't need your protection. I need—" She stopped herself, but it was too late. The words hung in the air between them, half-formed but understood. Roman stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "What do you need, Elena?" The question felt dangerous, weighted with implications neither of them was ready to name. "I need you to stop making choices for me," she said finally. "If we're ending this, fine. But it should be my decision too, not just yours." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What if we didn't end it? What? What if we pushed back, made it clear that this isn't going away, that they can print whatever they want, but it won't change anything?" He moved closer, his eyes locked on hers. "What if we stopped pretending and just—" "Stopped pretending," Elena repeated slowly. "You mean, actually, I mean I'm tired of lying about what this is." His voice was rough, honest in a way she'd never heard from him before. "I pulled you into this for the wrong reasons. To spite my father, to get out of an arrangement I didn't want. But that's not why I want you here now." Elena's breath caught. "Roman, I know the timing is terrible. I know this is the worst possible moment to say any of this. But if we're going to fight back, I need you to know it's not just about the arrangement anymore. At least not for me." The walls she'd been building around her heart cracked. "This is insane." "Probably." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "But nothing about this has been sane from the beginning. Why start now?" Elena wanted to argue, to point out all the ways this was a terrible idea. But looking at him now, standing in her cramped apartment with his guard finally down, she couldn't find the words. "If we do this," she said carefully, "it has to be different. No more making decisions without me. No more treating me like I'm something to be protected and managed." "Okay. I'm serious, Roman. I'm not going to be some accessory in your life. If we're doing this, really doing this, then I need to be an equal, not your assistant pretending to be your girlfriend, not your girlfriend playing at being your partner, an actual equal." He held her gaze. "What does that look like?" "I don't know yet." Elena's voice softened. "But I think we figure it out together. No scripts, no plans. Just honest. Honest. He said it like he was testing the word. I'm not sure I know how to do that. Then we'll learn. Roman closed the distance between them, his hand coming up to cup her face. You're sure about this? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back to the way things were. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. I stopped wanting to go back weeks ago. He kissed her then, and it was nothing like the kiss in his office. That had been performance, strategy, a move in a game. This was something else entirely. Raw and real and terrifying in its honesty. When they finally broke apart, Elena was shaking. So what now? She asked. Now we fight back. Roman's expression hardened. But we do it smart. And together. The next morning they went to the office as a united front. The whispers started the moment they walked through the lobby, but Elena held her head high. Roman's hand was firm on her back, a gesture that felt genuine now rather than calculated. Claire met them at Roman's office, her expression carefully neutral. There are about 20 reporters in the lobby asking for a statement. Let them wait, Roman said. He turned to Elena. We need to get ahead of this. Control the narrative before they do it for us. How? We give them a story, but on our terms. He spent the next hour on the phone with publicists, lawyers, and people whose job titles Elena didn't fully understand. By noon, a press release went out from the DeLuca company's official channels. It was brief, professional, and surprisingly personal. Roman DeLuca confirms his relationship with Elena Morales and asks that the media respect their privacy during this time. Any further harassment or publication of private information will be met with legal action. It wasn't much, but it was something. A line drawn in the sand. The media response was immediate and chaotic. Some outlets backed off, wary of legal threats. Others doubled down, digging even harder for dirt. But the tone had shifted slightly. They were no longer just talking about the gold digger and the billionaire. They were talking about a relationship that might actually be real. Lucia called that afternoon. Roman put her on speaker. Nonna, you're making waves. Her voice was unreadable. Bold move, that press release. I'm tired of letting other people control the story. And the girl? She's still standing beside you after all this? Elena spoke up before Roman could answer. I'm right here, Mrs. DeLuca. And yes, I'm still here. A pause, then Lucia said, Come to dinner tonight, just the three of us. We have things to discuss. It wasn't a request. The car ride to Lucia's penthouse apartment in the Upper East Side was tense. Roman's jaw was tight, his knuckles white on his knee. Elena reached over and took his hand. She's going to try to break us up, Roman said quietly. Then we don't let her. He looked at her, something vulnerable in his eyes. You keep surprising me. Good. Keep you on your toes. Lucia's apartment was all old money and careful taste. Antique furniture, original artwork, a view that stretched across Central Park. She greeted them at the door herself, no butler or staff in sight. Just her, elegant and terrifying in a black dress that probably cost more than Elena's car. Sit, she said, gesturing to the dining room. Dinner was already laid out, a meal that looked simple but was probably cooked by someone with a Michelin star. Lucia poured wine with her own hands, a gesture that felt significant. So, she said once they were all seated, let's talk about what this really is. It's what I said in the press release, Roman began, but Lucia held up a hand. I'm not asking you. I'm asking her. She turned her sharp gaze on Elena. What are your intentions with my grandson? Elena met her eyes steadily. I don't have intentions. I have feelings. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've landed yourself a very comfortable position. If I wanted comfortable, I would have walked away weeks ago. Elena's voice was calm but firm. This thing between Roman and me, it started as a mistake, a lie. But it became something else. Something I didn't plan for and definitely didn't expect. Love? Lucia's tone was skeptical. I don't know yet. Maybe. Or maybe something that could turn into that if we're given the space to figure it out. Elena leaned forward. But I'm not here for his money or his name or whatever power you think comes with being a DeLuca. I'm here because when I'm with him, I feel like I'm seeing the person he actually is, not the role he's been forced to play his whole life. Lucia studied her for a long moment. Then she turned to Roman. And you? What do you see when you look at her? Roman's hand found Elena's under the table. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. Someone who doesn't need me to be the heir or the boss or any of the things everyone else expects. Just me. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Lucia sighed. You're both fools. Elena's heart sank. But, Lucia continued, a ghost of a smile touching her lips, you're honest fools. And in this family, that's rare enough to be valuable. Roman's hand tightened on Elena's. You're not going to fight this? Fight what? Young people making terrible decisions? I'm old, not stupid. I know when I'm beaten. She sipped her wine. Besides, I've been watching you for years, Roman, waiting for you to choose something for yourself instead of just reacting to what others want from you. Maybe this girl is that choice. She has a name, Roman said quietly. I know. Lucia's gaze softened slightly as she looked at Elena. Elena Morales, college scholarship, hospital administrator mother, worked 3 jobs to graduate debt-free. You think I didn't do my homework? Elena felt exposed, but she kept her chin up. And what did your homework tell you? That you're smart, stubborn, and you don't quit when things get hard. All good qualities for surviving this family. She paused. But understand something, child. If you hurt him, if you turn out to be playing a longer game than any of us realized, I will destroy you. Thoroughly and without mercy. Are we clear? Crystal, Elena said. And the same goes for him. If he hurts me, I'm gone. No amount of money or threats will keep me in a situation that makes me miserable. Lucia actually smiled at that. I believe you. She raised her glass. To honest fools, then. May you survive each other. They clinked glasses, and Elena felt something shift. Not acceptance exactly, but acknowledgement, a grudging respect. The rest of the dinner was less combative. Lucia told stories about Roman as a child, serious even then, always watching, always calculating. Roman countered with stories about Lucia terrorizing his father and uncles, ruling the family with an iron fist wrapped in designer silk. She once made my Uncle Marco stand in the rain for an hour because he missed Sunday dinner, Roman said, a rare smile on his face. He was late 3 times in a row, Lucia said without remorse. Actions have consequences. He learned that quickly. Elena found herself laughing, the tension slowly draining away. This was still dangerous territory, still a family that operated by rules she didn't fully understand, but it felt less hostile now, more like she'd passed some invisible test. As they were leaving, Lucia pulled Elena aside while Roman retrieved their coats. A word of advice, the older woman said quietly. This family will test you, not just once, but over and over. They'll look for weaknesses, for pressure points, for ways to determine if you're worth keeping around. Don't let them see you break. I don't plan to. Good. Lucia's expression was unreadable. And one more thing. Roman is stronger than he thinks, but more fragile than he knows. The weight he carries, trying to clean up this family's legacy, trying to be better than what came before, it will crush him eventually if he tries to do it alone. If you care about him, help him carry it. Elena's throat tightened. I will. Lucia nodded once, then turned and walked back into her apartment, leaving Elena standing in the hallway trying to process what had just happened. Roman appeared with their coats. What did she say? That I should help you carry your burdens. Elena slipped into her coat. And that your family is going to keep testing me. She's not wrong on either count. They took the elevator down in silence, but it was a comfortable silence now. Weighted, but not suffocating. On the drive back to Elena's apartment, Roman's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. It's my father. He answered on speaker. What do you want? Dante's voice was cold fury. You've made your choice clear. But understand this, Roman. You're jeopardizing everything we've built. The Castellano alliance could have secured our position for the next generation. Now they're threatening to back out of deals worth millions because you've insulted them. They'll survive. Will they? And will you, when the board starts questioning your judgment? When investors start pulling out because you're too busy playing house with some... Finish that sentence, Roman said, his voice deadly quiet. I dare you. A pause. Then Dante said, This isn't over. You're right, it's not. Because I'm done pretending you have any say in my personal life. You want to challenge me for control of the company? Go ahead. But Elena stays, and that's not negotiable. He hung up before his father could respond. Elena stared at him. You just basically declared war on your own father. I declared independence. There's a difference. Is there? Because it sounded a lot like, I know what it sounded like. Roman ran a hand through his hair. But I meant what I said. I'm tired of letting him dictate my life. If that means a fight, then we fight. Elena's chest tightened with something that felt like fear and pride mixed together. You're really willing to risk everything for this? For us? Yes. He looked at her, and the certainty in his eyes took her breath away. I spent my whole life being what other people needed me to be. For once, I want to be what I choose to be. And I choose this. You. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and danger. When they reached her apartment, Roman walked her up like always. But this time, when she unlocked her door, she turned to him. Do you want to come in? It was a simple question with complicated implications. Roman hesitated, and Elena saw him weighing all the reasons this was a bad idea. Just to talk, she added. We don't have to. I know. He smiled, and it was genuine, unguarded. I'd like that. Inside, they ended up on her couch with coffee that Elena made too strong and leftover takeout that had seen better days. They talked about everything and nothing, childhood memories, favorite books, the kind of random details that felt intimate in their ordinariness. I wanted to be a teacher, Elena admitted at one point. Before everything with my dad leaving and money getting tight, I thought I'd teach elementary school, help kids who were struggling like I did. What stopped you? Reality. Teachers don't make enough to pay off loans and help with my mom's medical bills. So I did the practical thing, got a business degree, took whatever jobs paid the most. She shrugged. Ended up in temp work, which led to your job posting. Do you regret it? Not teaching? Elena thought about that. Sometimes, but then I think about what I've learned in the last few weeks. How to navigate rooms full of people who want to eat me alive. How to stand my ground against someone like Vivian. How to survive your grandmother's dinner table. Those are skills too. Different kind of education. Exactly, she smiled. What about you? Did you ever want to be anything other than what you are? Roman was quiet for a moment. When I was 12, I wanted to be a pianist. I was good too. Really good. My teacher said I had the hands for it, the discipline. He flexed his fingers, staring at them. Then my grandfather died, and my father sat me down and told me that DeLucas don't make music. We make money and power. Everything else is a distraction. That's sad. That's life in this family. But there was a note of old grief in his voice that told Elena it had cost him something to give that up. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the city humming beyond her windows. Elena found herself studying Roman in the soft lamplight, the sharp lines of his face softened by exhaustion, the way his shoulders had finally relaxed from their usual rigid posture. He looked younger like this, more human. Thank you, she said suddenly. He glanced at her. For what? For choosing this. Me. Even when it's messy and complicated and possibly career suicide. Roman reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I don't know how this ends, Elena. I can't promise it'll be easy or that we won't crash and burn spectacularly. But I'd rather crash with you than succeed alone. Elena's breath caught. Before she could second-guess herself, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, nothing like the passionate kiss outside her building or the claiming one in his office. This was a question and an answer all at once. When they pulled apart, Roman rested his forehead against hers. Stay, Elena whispered. Elena, just to sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight, not after everything. He hesitated, and she could see him wrestling with all the reasons this was crossing yet another line. But then he nodded. They ended up in her bed, still fully clothed, lying face to face in the darkness. Roman's arm was around her waist, and Elena's head was tucked against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "This is real now," she said quietly. "Isn't it?" "Yes." His voice was rough, with something that might have been fear or hope or both. "It's real." Elena closed her eyes, letting that truth settle over her. Everything had changed. The game they'd been playing had become something genuine, and there was no going back to pretending. Whatever came next, Vivian's revenge, Dante's fury, the media circus, the family politics, they'd face it together. For better or worse, they were in this now. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window and the unfamiliar weight of Roman's arm draped across her waist. For a moment she lay still, processing the fact that Manhattan's most feared businessman was asleep in her bed, his face pressed into her pillow, his breathing deep and even. She'd expected it to feel awkward. Instead, it felt right in a way that terrified her. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached for it carefully, trying not to wake Roman, and saw a text from Claire. "Board meeting moved to 9 a.m. Roman needs to be there. It's important." Elena glanced at the clock. 7:30. She had an hour and a half to get them both ready and across town. "Roman." She shook his shoulder gently. "Wake up." He stirred, his eyes opening slowly, and for a moment confusion flickered across his face. Then awareness returned, and with it, something that looked like contentment. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning. Claire says you have a board meeting at 9. She used the word important in italics, which I'm assuming means your father is making his move." That woke him up completely. Roman sat up, running a hand through his hair. "What time is it?" 7:30. "We need to go." He was already moving, grabbing his phone, checking messages. Elena watched him shift from the man who'd held her last night into the controlled, calculating boss she'd first met. The transformation was fascinating and a little sad. They made it to the office by 8:45, both of them running on coffee and adrenaline. Claire met them at the elevator with a stack of documents and an expression that said things were worse than Elena had thought. "Your father called an emergency session," Claire told Roman. "He's claiming mismanagement, conflicts of interest, and compromised judgment. He has 3 board members backing him already." Roman's jaw tightened. "How many does he need?" 7 out of 12 to call for a vote of no confidence. He has 4, including himself. "So he needs 3 more." Roman took the documents, scanning them quickly. His expression was unreadable, but Elena saw the tension in his shoulders. "Who's on the fence?" "Martelli, Jong, and Patterson. If he flips any one of them, this gets dangerous." Elena's stomach dropped. What happens if he gets the votes? Roman looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something that might have been fear in his eyes. "Then I lose everything, the company, the position, any ability to change how this family operates. My father takes over completely, and we go back to the way things were. Or worse." The meeting was in the main conference room, the one with the long table and the view that made you feel like you were floating above the city. Elena wasn't supposed to be there, but Roman kept her at his side anyway. A statement, whether the board liked it or not. Dante was already seated at the head of the table, 3 other board members flanking him like soldiers. He looked up when Roman entered, and his smile was all teeth. "Good of you to join us, son. Cut the performance," Roman said, moving to the opposite end of the table. Elena stood behind him, her hands clasped to keep them from shaking. "What's this really about?" "This is about the future of this company, about whether we're going to continue to grow and thrive, or whether we're going to let personal distractions compromise decades of careful work." Dante's gaze flicked to Elena, dismissive. "You've made it clear where your priorities lie. The board deserves to know if you're still capable of leading." "My personal life has nothing to do with my performance." "Doesn't it?" Dante pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. "Let's review, shall we? In the last month, you've canceled 3 major meetings, missed 2 investor calls, and turned down a partnership worth $40 million because it was connected to the Castellanos. All because you decided to play house with your assistant." Roman's expression didn't change, but Elena felt him tense beside her. The Castellano deal was overvalued and came with too many strings. Any competent analyst would have reached the same conclusion. Or any man thinking with something other than his brain. Marco spoke up from the middle of the table, his smirk insufferable. Come on, Roman, we've all been there. Pretty girl, bad timing, terrible decisions, but you're supposed to be better than that. Watch your mouth, Roman said quietly, but there was danger in his voice. Or what? You'll throw me out? You might not have that authority much longer. The door opened and Lucia walked in. The room went silent. She moved with the unhurried grace of someone who knew that everyone would wait, that her presence alone shifted the entire dynamic. She took a seat at the side of the table, equidistant from both Dante and Roman, and folded her hands. Continue, she said. Dante's confidence wavered slightly, but he pressed on. As I was saying, Roman's judgment has been compromised. He's putting his personal interests ahead of the company's well-being. That's unacceptable for someone in his position. And you're suggesting what exactly? Lucia's tone was mild, but everyone in the room knew better than to relax. A vote of no confidence. We remove Roman from his position and install new leadership. Someone who can make decisions based on what's best for the business, not what's best for his love life. Someone like you, Roman said flatly. If the board sees fit. The three fence-sitters, Martelli, Jong, and Patterson, were watching this exchange with careful neutrality. Elena recognized the look. They were calculating, weighing their options, trying to figure out which way the wind was blowing before they committed. Let me make sure I understand, Lucia said, her voice cutting through the tension. You want to remove my grandson from his position because he's in a relationship. Is that the argument? It's not about the relationship, Dante insisted. It's about the pattern of poor decisions that relationship represents. Such as turning down the Castellano deal, which was overpriced garbage that would have locked us into unfavorable terms for years. I reviewed the contract myself. Lucia's gaze was sharp. What else? Dante faltered. The missed meetings, 2 of which were rescheduled due to client requests, and 1 of which Roman had me attend in his place because I was better suited to handle the negotiation. I closed that deal, by the way, for 15% more than the original offer. Lucia leaned back in her chair. Is there anything else, or are we done wasting everyone's time? The room was silent. Elena watched the board members' faces, saw the moment the calculation shifted. Lucia had just made it clear which side she was on, and in this family, that meant everything. Dante's face went red. This is absurd. You're letting sentiment cloud your judgment. Am I? Or are you letting your ego cloud yours? Lucia's voice sharpened. You've been trying to control Roman since he was old enough to understand what this family does. He's exceeded every expectation, turned questionable enterprises into legitimate businesses, and increased our revenue by 40% in 5 years. But the moment he makes a choice you don't approve of, you try to tear him down. That's not leadership, Dante. That's pettiness. With all due respect, I don't recall asking for your respect. I'm telling you how this is going to go. She stood, and everyone else instinctively did the same. Roman stays in his position. You will drop this ridiculous vote of no confidence. And if you ever try to undermine him again, you'll find yourself on the outside looking in. Are we clear? Dante looked like he wanted to explode, but after a long, tense moment, he nodded stiffly. Lucia turned to the rest of the board. Any objections? Martelli, Jong, and Patterson all shook their heads quickly. The message was clear. The matriarch had spoken, and only a fool would contradict her. Good. This meeting is adjourned. Lucia swept out of the room, leaving stunned silence in her wake. Dante stood frozen for a moment, then stormed out, his supporters trailing behind him like wounded soldiers. Marco shot Roman a look that promised this wasn't over before following. When the room finally cleared, Roman let out a breath he'd been holding. His hands were shaking slightly, and he pressed them flat against the table. That was close, Elena said quietly. Too close. He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his expression made her chest ache. If Lucia hadn't stepped in, but she did. This time. But he's not going to stop. He'll just regroup, find another angle. Roman's voice was tight, and eventually he might succeed. Elena stepped closer, her hand finding his. Then we make sure he doesn't get another chance. We prove that you were right to make the choices you made. How? By being better than him. By showing the board, the family, everyone that your way works. She squeezed his hand. You said you wanted to build something different, so let's build it. The determination in her voice seemed to steady him. Roman pulled her into his arms, and Elena let herself lean into him, feeling the rapid beat of his heart against her cheek. I don't know what I did to deserve you, he murmured into her hair. Kissed me without asking in a moment of desperation? She felt him huff a laugh. It's not about deserving, it's about choosing, and I'm choosing this, us. They stood like that for a long moment, two people who'd stumbled into something real in the middle of all the lies and games. The door opened and Claire appeared, then quickly averted her eyes. Sorry, I can come back. It's fine, Roman said, not letting go of Elena. What is it? Vivian is in the lobby. She's demanding to see you. Roman's grip on Elena tightened. Tell her I'm busy. I did. She says she'll wait. Then let her wait. But Elena pulled back, looking up at him. Maybe you should see her. End this properly. Elena, I'm serious. She's not going to go away until someone makes her. And it should be you, not security guards or lawyers or threats. Just tell her it's over. Really over. Roman studied her face. You want to be there when I do it? Absolutely. Something that might have been pride flickered in his eyes. Okay, let's go. They took the elevator down together. Vivienne was pacing in the lobby, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. She looked furious and desperate in equal measure, her perfect facade finally cracking. When she saw them, her eyes narrowed. Finally, I've been waiting for an hour. I was busy, Roman said. His voice was cold but not cruel, just final. What do you want, Vivienne? I want to understand why you're throwing everything away for her. She gestured at Elena like she was something distasteful. What does she have that I don't? Besides basic human decency, Elena said before she could stop herself. Vivian's face went red. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? You've spent weeks trying to destroy me, feeding lies to the press, sending threatening messages, cornering me in alleys, all because Roman chose someone who isn't you. Elena stepped forward, her fear finally giving way to anger. That's not love, Vivian. That's obsession, and it's pathetic. You little... Vivian lunged forward, but Roman stepped between them. Enough. His voice cut through the lobby like a knife. You need to hear this, Vivian, so listen carefully. I'm not interested. I never was. My father arranged that introduction, but I never agreed to anything. You decided we were a done deal without ever asking what I wanted. Your father said, I don't care what my father said. He doesn't control my life. Not anymore. Roman's expression was steel. Elena is who I choose. She's who I want. And nothing you do, no threats, no media campaigns, no family pressure, is going to change that. Vivian's eyes were bright with unshed tears, her perfectly applied makeup starting to smudge. For the first time, Elena saw past the calculating socialite to the woman underneath. She looked lost, hurt. I did everything right, Vivian said, her voice breaking. I was perfect. I followed every rule, played every game the way I was supposed to, and it still wasn't enough. No, Roman said, and his voice was gentler now. It wasn't, because you were playing a game I never agreed to join. You want someone who fits into your plans, who makes sense on paper. That's fine, but I'm not that person, and you deserve to find someone who actually wants what you want instead of wasting your time on someone who doesn't. Vivian stared at him for a long moment. Then her gaze shifted to Elena. You really love him? Elena felt Roman tense beside her, waiting for her answer. It was too soon, too fast, too much. But standing there in the lobby with Vivian's wounded eyes on her, Elena realized the truth. Yes, she said simply. I do. Roman's hand found hers, squeezing tight. Vivian closed her eyes, a single tear escaping down her cheek. When she opened them again, something had changed. The fight had gone out of her. Then I hope you survive this family, she said quietly, because they'll eat you alive if you let them. She turned and walked toward the door, her shoulders straight despite the defeat written in every line of her body. At the threshold, she paused. For what it's worth, she said without turning around, he never looked at me the way he looks at you. Not once. Then she was gone, disappearing into the Manhattan afternoon. Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That was necessary. Roman turned to face her, his expression intense. Did you mean it? What you said? Elena's heart was racing. They were in the middle of the lobby with dozens of employees pretending not to stare. This was the worst possible place for this conversation, but Roman was looking at her like her answer was the only thing in the world that mattered. Yes, she said again. I meant it. I know it's too soon. I know it's complicated, but he kissed her, right there in the lobby, in front of everyone, no longer caring about appearances or strategy or what anyone thought. This was real, raw, and entirely too public. When they finally broke apart, Elena was dimly aware of Claire clapping somewhere behind them, and someone else whistling. Her face burned, but she was smiling too. For the record, Roman said, his forehead pressed to hers, I love you too. Probably have since you called me out on my control issues that first week. Elena laughed, the sound shaky with emotion. We're insane. Probably. He kissed her again, softer this time. But I'm okay with that. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. True to their word, Elena and Roman worked together to prove that his choices hadn't compromised his judgment. They closed 3 major deals, launched a new subsidiary focused on legitimate tech investments, and slowly began winning over the board members who'd been on the fence. It wasn't smooth. There were stumbles, arguments, moments where the stress threatened to pull them apart. Roman's controlling instincts didn't disappear overnight, and Elena's stubborn independence clashed with his need to protect her. But they worked through it, learning to navigate each other's rough edges. Dante watched from the sidelines, his anger simmering but contained. He'd lost this round, but Elena knew he hadn't given up. Men like him never did. One evening, about a month after the board meeting, Elena was working late when her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, remembering the threatening messages. But something made her pick up. Hello? Miss Morales? A woman's voice, professional but warm. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm a reporter with the Manhattan Chronicle. I'm working on a feature about women in business, and I was hoping to interview you. Elena's guard went up immediately. I'm not interested in doing interviews. I understand. You've had a rough time with the press, but this isn't a gossip piece. It's about executive assistants who've become genuine partners in their companies, who've risen beyond traditional roles. Your story fits that narrative. My story is private. Is it? Because from what I've seen, you've been handling significant responsibilities at DeLuca Industries. You were in that board meeting last month. You've been seen at major negotiations. That's not typical assistant work. Sarah paused. I think you have a story worth telling, Miss Morales. One that's about more than just who you're dating. Elena hesitated. Every instinct said to hang up, to avoid giving the media any more ammunition. But Sarah had a point. The narrative about her had been written entirely by other people. Maybe it was time to tell her own story. Let me think about it, Elena said finally. Of course. I'll send you my contact information. Take your time. After she hung up, Elena sat staring at her phone. Roman appeared in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Who was that? He asked, setting 1 cup on her desk. A reporter. She wants to interview me. Roman's expression immediately went dark. Absolutely not. Roman, the last time the press got involved, they tore you apart. I'm not letting that happen again. You're not letting me. Elena set down her phone carefully. We talked about this. About you making decisions for me. This is different. This is about keeping you safe. No, it's about you being scared. She stood, moving around the desk to face him. I'm scared too, but maybe she's right. Maybe it's time I told my own story instead of letting everyone else tell it for me. Roman's jaw worked. And if they twist it, use it against us, then we deal with it, together. Elena took his hand. You said you wanted to build something different. That includes being honest, even when it's risky. He stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. You're going to do it anyway, aren't you? Probably. But I'd rather do it with your support. You have it. He pulled her close. You always have it, even when I'm being an overprotective idiot. I know. She kissed him softly. That's why I love you. The interview happened 2 weeks later at a quiet cafe far from DeLuca Industries, and the usual Manhattan power spots. Sarah Chen turned out to be exactly what she'd sounded like on the phone: professional, thorough, and genuinely interested in Elena's perspective. They talked for 2 hours about Elena's background, her education, her journey from temp work to Roman's office, about what it was like to navigate a world that had never been designed for people like her, about the relationship and the scrutiny, and the way it felt to be judged by strangers who'd never met her. What would you say to young women who see your story and think the only way to succeed is to date the boss? Sarah asked. Elena thought carefully before answering. I'd say that's not what this is. Yes, I'm in a relationship with Roman, but I'm also good at my job. I've earned my position through work, not through who I'm sleeping with. And if people can't see that distinction, that's their problem, not mine. That's a strong stance. It has to be. Women are always questioned in ways men aren't. If a man dates someone from work, he's taking what he wants. If a woman does it, she's climbing the ladder. The double standard is exhausting. Elena leaned forward. I'm not going to apologize for falling in love or for being good at what I do. Both things can be true at the same time. The article ran 3 weeks later. The headline read, Elena Morales on love, power, and refusing to apologize. The response was immediate and divided. Some people praised her honesty, her refusal to play the victim or the gold digger. Others doubled down on their criticism, calling her calculated, manipulative, a feminist buzzword. Salad hiding the fact that she'd slept her way up. But something had shifted. The narrative wasn't entirely controlled by hostile voices anymore. Elena had claimed some of her story back. Roman read the article 3 times, then looked at her with something like awe. You're going to change this company whether my family likes it or not. That was always the plan, Elena said with a smile. You just didn't know it yet. That evening, they were having dinner at Roman's penthouse when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Lucia, he answered on speaker. Nona. Have you seen the article? Lucia's voice was unreadable. Yes. Good. Then you know your girl has more spine than half the men in this family. A pause. I'm hosting a charity gala next month. Major donors, political connections, the whole circus. I expect both of you to attend. And Elena, you'll need to give a speech. Elena's stomach dropped. A speech? About the DeLuca Foundation's new scholarship program for first-generation college students. You're going to be the face of it. Consider it your official debut as more than just Roman's girlfriend. Lucia, Roman began, but his grandmother cut him off. This isn't a request. She wants to prove she belongs? Fine. Let's see if she can handle the spotlight when it's aimed at her own merit, not just her relationship with you. The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone, her mind racing. This was a test, another one. But this time, it wasn't about surviving hostile dinners or media scrutiny. It was about proving she could stand on her own, even in Roman's world. You don't have to do this, Roman said quietly. Yes, I do. Elena's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. She's right. If I'm going to be part of this family, part of this company, I need to be more than just the woman standing next to you. I need to be someone in my own right. You already are. To you. Maybe even to Lucia. But the rest of them? Elena shook her head. They still see me as an interloper, a phase. Time to change that. Roman pulled her into his arms, and Elena let herself lean into his strength for a moment. But even as she did, she was already thinking ahead, planning, preparing for the next test. Because Lucia was right about one thing. This family would keep testing her, over and over, in increasingly difficult ways. If she wanted to survive, if she wanted to thrive, she needed to be ready. The gala was a month away. 1 month to prove she was more than just the girl who'd caught Roman DeLuca's eye. 1 month to become someone no one could dismiss or discount. 1 month to show them all exactly who Elena Morales really was. The morning light filtered through Elena's curtains, painting the room in shades of gold and amber. She woke to find Roman already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. How long have you been staring at me? She asked, her voice still rough with sleep. Not long, but the way he said it suggested otherwise. You talk in your sleep. Elena groaned, pulling the blanket over her face. What did I say? Something about spreadsheets and your mother's empanadas? He tugged the blanket down, smiling. Very profound. She swatted his arm but couldn't help smiling back. Then reality crashed in. Today was the board meeting where Dante would make his move. Roman had mentioned it last night, the threat hanging over everything like a storm cloud. "What time is it?" she asked. 6:30. I need to leave soon." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture betraying his nerves. "The meeting's at 9. Elena sat up, suddenly wide awake. "I'm coming with you." "Elena, don't. We said we're in this together, remember? That means I don't sit home while you walk into an ambush alone." Roman looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression must have convinced him. "Okay, but you stay quiet during the meeting. Let me handle my father." "I'm not an idiot. I know how board meetings work." "I know you do." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "That's not what I'm worried about." They arrived at the office an hour later, both dressed for war. Roman in a charcoal suit that made him look even more imposing than usual. Elena in a navy dress that the stylist had picked out weeks ago. Professional armor for a professional battlefield. Claire met them in the hallway, her expression tight. "They're already gathering. Your father brought 3 board members with him, Morrison, Chen, and Volkov. They've been in there for 20 minutes. Getting their story straight," Roman said grimly. He turned to Elena. "Last chance to wait in my office." "Not happening." The boardroom was all dark wood and leather chairs, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Dante sat at one end of the massive table, flanked by the 3 board members Claire had mentioned. They all looked up when Roman entered, their expressions ranging from hostile to carefully neutral. And sitting in the corner like a spectator at a gladiator match was Vivienne. Her presence was a calculated insult, a reminder that she still had connections here, still had power. Roman's jaw tightened, but he moved to the head of the table without acknowledging her. Elena took a seat along the wall, close enough to support him, far enough to stay out of the direct line of fire. "Let's get started," Dante said, not bothering with pleasantries. "We're here because recent events have raised serious questions about Roman's judgment and his ability to lead this company." "Recent events," Roman repeated flatly. "You mean my relationship?" "I mean your reckless decision to publicly attach yourself to an employee, creating a liability that's already cost us business." Dante gestured to Morrison, a gray-haired man with cold eyes. "David, share the numbers." Morrison opened a folder. "The Castellano deal has fallen through. That's $40 million in lost revenue. 3 other partnerships are under review because our associates are questioning the stability of leadership, and media coverage has been overwhelmingly negative, which affects investor confidence." "Media coverage that was orchestrated by the Castellanos as retaliation," Roman countered. "You're blaming me for their tantrum." "I'm blaming you for creating a situation where they felt the need for retaliation," Dante shot back. "You were offered a strategic alliance that would have benefited everyone. Instead, you chose to pursue a relationship with—" He glanced at Elena with barely concealed contempt. "Someone wholly unsuitable." Elena felt the words like a slap, but she kept her face neutral. This was exactly what Lucia had warned her about. They'd look for pressure points, test her breaking point. "Be careful how you finish that sentence," Roman said, his voice deadly quiet. "Or what? You'll throw another tantrum? Make another impulsive decision that costs this company millions?" Dante leaned forward. "Face it, Roman, you're not ready to lead. You've proven that conclusively. What I've proven is that I won't be manipulated by your outdated ideas about strategic marriages and family alliances." Roman's hands were flat on the table, controlled but tense. The Castellano deal wasn't worth what they were asking. Not the money, not the concessions, and definitely not my personal life. "Your personal life affects all of us," Chen spoke up, his accent clipped and precise. "Whether you like it or not, you represent this company. Your choices reflect on our reputation. Then maybe you should be more concerned about the reputation we had before I took over," Roman said. "Underground dealings, money laundering, connections to people who solved problems with violence. That's the legacy I've been trying to clean up for 5 years. And it's working. Our legitimate businesses are thriving. We're expanding into new markets without breaking laws, and we're building something sustainable. But apparently that doesn't matter because I won't marry who you tell me to." The room fell silent. Elena saw something flicker across Morrison's face. Was it doubt? Dante's expression hardened. This isn't about one relationship. It's about a pattern of behavior that puts his interests above the company's. Then call for a vote, Roman said. Isn't that why we're here? You want me out, make it official. Roman, Volkov started, but Dante cut him off. Fine. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. All in favor of removing Roman DeLuca from his position as CEO. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. This was it. Everything Roman had built, everything he'd worked for, coming down to this moment. Dante's hand went up immediately. Chen followed, his expression apologetic but firm. Morrison hesitated. His eyes moved from Dante to Roman, weighing something Elena couldn't see. David, Dante prompted. We discussed this. We discussed a lot of things. Morrison sat back in his chair, his gaze settling on Roman. But I'm not convinced this is the right move. Dante's face flushed. Excuse me? You heard me. Roman's made one unconventional personal choice. Meanwhile, under his leadership, this company has seen consistent growth, improved public image, and successful expansion into legitimate markets. Those are facts. Everything else is speculation about what might happen because we don't like who he's dating. It's more than that. Is it? Morrison's voice was calm but firm. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a power play disguised as concern for the company. And I didn't build my career by confusing the two. Volkov nodded slowly. I have to agree. Roman's personal life is his business. As long as he continues to deliver results, and he has, I don't see grounds for removal. Dante looked like he'd been struck. This is absurd. You're letting sentiment cloud your judgment. No, Morrison said. I'm letting results speak for themselves, and right now they're speaking pretty clearly. The vote was called. 2 in favor of removal, Dante and Chen. 3 against, Morrison, Volkov, and the other board members who'd remained quiet but now made their positions clear with raised hands. Roman had won. Barely, but he'd won. Dante stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Roman's voice was steel. You made your play, and you lost. Now you have a choice. Accept it and continue working with me to build this company, or step down and let someone else take your position. The threat hung in the air. Dante stared at his son for a long moment, something ugly and defeated crossing his face. Then he turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Chen and the others followed, leaving just Roman, Elena, and Vivian in the boardroom. Vivian stood, smoothing her skirt. Congratulations, you've won this round. There are no rounds, Vivian. There's just reality. And the reality is that this, he gestured between himself and Elena, isn't going away. We'll see. Her smile was sharp, dangerous. Your father might have failed today, but there are other ways to make someone's life difficult. Ways that don't require board votes or official channels. She started toward the door, but Elena stood, blocking her path. Stop, Elena said quietly. Vivian raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? I said stop. All of it. The threats, the games, the manipulation. It's done. And who's going to make me? You? Vivian laughed. You're nothing. A temporary distraction that's still standing here while you're the one who got rejected, Elena interrupted. You can tell yourself whatever story you need to sleep at night. But the truth is, Roman didn't choose you. He chose himself. And part of that choice was me. That must really hurt, knowing you did everything right according to your family's rules and still ended up alone. Something cracked in Vivian's expression, a flash of genuine hurt before the mask slammed back into place. You'll regret this. Maybe, but at least I'll regret something I chose, not something someone else decided for me. Elena stepped aside, clearing the path to the door. Now get out. Vivian left without another word, her heels clicking against the marble like gunshots. When the door closed behind her, Elena let out a shaky breath. Roman was at her side immediately, his hand on her back. You okay? He asked. I think so. She turned to face him. Did that just happen? Did we actually win? We did. For now. His expression was cautious, guarded. But my father's not going to let this go easily. And Vivian, we'll do whatever Vivian's going to do, Elena finished. But we'll handle it. together. Roman pulled her close, and for a moment they just stood there in the empty boardroom, holding each other while the city sprawled below them. "I need to tell you something," Roman said finally, his voice muffled against her hair. Elena pulled back to look at him. "What?" "This thing between us, it stopped being fake for me weeks ago. Maybe even from the beginning. I just didn't want to admit it because it complicated everything." Her heart stuttered. "Roman, let me finish." He cupped her face in his hands. "I know this is messy and complicated and possibly the worst decision I've ever made. But I also know that when I'm with you, I feel like I can be someone other than what everyone expects. Someone better. And I don't want to lose that." Elena's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "You won't. Lose it, I mean. Lose me. I'm not going anywhere. You promise?" "I promise." He kissed her then, and it felt like sealing a vow. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Dante made good on his threat, not by trying to remove Roman again, but by making his life difficult in smaller, pettier ways. Meetings scheduled at inconvenient times, resources suddenly unavailable, connections that mysteriously dried up. It was death by 1,000 cuts, and Elena watched Roman weather it with a patience she hadn't known he possessed. Vivian, true to form, tried a different approach. She started rumors, carefully crafted lies about Elena's past, about debts and scandals that didn't exist but sounded plausible enough to require constant refuting. It was exhausting, but Elena refused to back down. "She's desperate," Lucia said one evening. They'd started having weekly dinners, just the three of them, and Elena had grown to appreciate the older woman's brutal honesty. "Desperate people make mistakes. Just wait." The mistake came 2 months later. Vivian had been quietly meeting with several of the company's smaller investors, spreading concerns about Roman's leadership and hinting that a change might be necessary. She'd been careful, staying just inside the boundaries of plausible deniability, but she'd underestimated Morrison, who'd built his reputation on knowing everything that happened in Manhattan's business circles. When word got back to him about Vivian's whisper campaign, he didn't just tell Roman. He documented everything, gathered evidence, and handed it over with a simple message: "Time to end this." The evidence was damning. Emails, recorded conversations, testimony from investors who were uncomfortable with the pressure Vivian was applying. It painted a clear picture of someone trying to destabilize the company for personal reasons. Roman called a meeting, not with the board, but with the Castellano family directly. Elena insisted on coming, and this time Roman didn't argue. The Castellanos' office was in Midtown, all chrome and glass and aggressive modernity. Vivian's father, Marcus, met them in a conference room with Vivian at his side. Her confidence faltered when she saw what Roman carried, a folder thick with evidence. "We need to talk," Roman said, setting the folder on the table. Marcus glanced at it, then at his daughter. "About what?" "About the fact that your daughter has been actively working to undermine my company. Not because of business concerns, but because she's angry that I didn't marry her." Vivian went pale. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Roman opened the folder, spreading out documents. "Because I have emails where you explicitly tell investors that my leadership is unstable, recordings of phone calls where you suggest they pull their funding, and testimony from 3 separate sources that you threaten to leverage your family's connections to hurt the company if I didn't break up with Elena." Marcus's face darkened as he scanned the documents. "Vivian, what is this?" "He's lying. I have timestamps, recordings, and witnesses," Roman said flatly. "I'm not lying, and you know it." The silence that followed was suffocating. Marcus looked at his daughter with something Elena recognized from her own childhood, disappointment so profound it hurt worse than anger. "Get out," Marcus said quietly. "Daddy, I said get out." His voice rose. "You've embarrassed this family, jeopardized our business relationships, and acted like a spoiled child who didn't get her way. We're done here." Vivian looked at Roman, then at Elena, her expression crumbling. "This is all your fault, both of you." "No," Elena said firmly. "This is your fault. You had a choice. You could have accepted that Roman wasn't interested and moved on with your life. Instead, you decided to burn everything down. That's on you." Vivian fled the room, and they could hear her crying in the hallway. Elena almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Marcus rubbed his face. I apologize for my daughter's behavior. It was unacceptable. Will this affect our business relationship? Roman asked carefully. It shouldn't. What Vivian did was personal, and she'll face consequences for it. But the Castellano family doesn't let personal matters interfere with good business. He extended his hand. We may not have the alliance my daughter wanted, but there's no reason we can't work together professionally. Roman shook his hand, and Elena felt something loosen in her chest. It was over. Finally, over. In the car on the way back, Roman was quiet. Elena took his hand. You okay? She asked. I keep thinking about what my father would have done in that situation. He would have destroyed her completely, made sure she never worked in this city again, maybe worse. He looked at Elena. But that's not who I want to be. You're not him, Elena said firmly. You proved that today. You held people accountable without being cruel. That's the difference. Is it enough? It's more than enough. That evening, they went to Elena's apartment. It had become their refuge, the place where they could drop the masks and just be. Elena made pasta while Roman opened wine, and they ate dinner on her couch like normal people who didn't have boardroom battles and family drama to navigate. I've been thinking, Roman said, setting down his fork, about what comes next. Elena's stomach tightened. What do you mean? I mean this arrangement we had, the 3-month deal, the contract. That's over, right? We're past that. Way past it. So I want to make this official, real, not a performance or a strategy, just us. Elena's heart swelled. I want that too. Even knowing what it means, the scrutiny, the pressure, the fact that my family will always be complicated. Even knowing all of that. She moved closer, taking his hand. But I have conditions. Roman smiled. Of course you do. I'm keeping my job, not as your assistant. I'll find something else in the company or somewhere else entirely. But I'm not going to be known as just your girlfriend. I need my own identity, my own career. Done. What else? We make decisions together. No more unilateral moves, no more protecting me from information you think I can't handle. Equal partners in everything. Agreed. And we get our own place. Not your apartment, not mine. Somewhere that's ours, that we build together. Roman was quiet for a moment. Then, move in with me. Or let me move in here, whichever you want. But I don't want to spend another night wondering when I'll see you next. Elena's breath caught. That's fast? We've been living in each other's pockets for 3 months. How much faster can we go? He cupped her face. I love you, Elena. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was too scared of what it meant. But I'm done being scared. I love you, and I want to build a life with you. Whatever that looks like. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks before she could stop them. I love you too. Even when you're impossible and controlling and make decisions without asking. I'm working on that. I know. She kissed him, tasting salt and wine and the promise of something real. Okay. Okay? Okay, let's do this. Let's find a place together. Figure out what comes next. Build something real. Roman's smile was brighter than she'd ever seen it. Yeah? Yeah. They spent the rest of the night talking about the future, not in abstract terms, but in concrete plans, where they'd look for an apartment, what Elena would do career-wise, how Roman would continue transforming the company into something better than what he'd inherited. I want to start a foundation, Roman said at one point. They were lying on her couch, Elena tucked against his side. Using some of the family's money for actual good. Education programs, small business loans for people who can't get traditional financing. The kind of thing that helps people like you. Smart, capable, just needing a break. Elena's chest tightened. That's a good idea. A really good idea. You could run it, if you wanted. You understand what it's like to need those opportunities better than anyone I know. I'll think about it, Elena said, but she was already imagining it. A chance to use everything she'd learned to help people who'd been where she'd been. It felt right. The next morning, Elena woke to her phone ringing. Her mother's number flashed on the screen. Mama? She answered, still groggy. Elena, mija, did you see the news? Elena's stomach dropped. What news? She put her mother on speaker while she pulled up her phone's browser. Roman stirred beside her, instantly alert. The headline made her breath catch. DeLuca Air announces major philanthropy initiative and officially confirms relationship. Below it was a statement from Roman, released early that morning. Elena read it twice, her heart pounding. I'm pleased to announce the creation of the DeLuca Foundation for Educational and Economic Opportunity. This foundation will focus on providing resources to talented individuals who face systemic barriers to success. The foundation will be directed by Elena Morales, whose own experiences and insights will guide our mission to create real, lasting change. Additionally, I want to address the speculation about my personal life. Elena is not my assistant, not a distraction, and not a temporary arrangement. She is my partner in every sense of the word. Her integrity, intelligence, and strength have not only changed my life, but have inspired a new direction for my family's legacy. To those who questioned her character or motivations, you were wrong. And to Elena, thank you for seeing who I could be, even when I couldn't see it myself. Elena stared at the screen, tears blurring her vision. You did this without asking me, she said, but there was no anger in her voice. I did, Roman admitted. He was sitting up now, watching her carefully. And I'll apologize if you want me to, but I wanted the world to know. No more hiding, no more pretending it's anything other than what it is. Which is? Real, permanent, the rest of my life if you'll have me. Elena launched herself at him, kissing him hard enough to make him laugh. When she pulled back, she was grinning through tears. You're impossible, she said. Is that a yes to running the foundation? It's a yes to everything. Her mother was still on the phone, and Elena could hear her crying. Mija, I'm so proud of you. Mama, no, let me say this. You took a chance, and look where it brought you. Not just this man, not just this money, but the chance to help other people the way you wished someone had helped us. Elena's throat tightened. I love you, Mama. I love you too, Mija. Now go. You have work to do. The next few months were a whirlwind. Elena officially resigned as Roman's assistant and took over the foundation, throwing herself into the work with an intensity that surprised even her. She hired staff, established programs, and started reaching out to schools and community organizations. The response was overwhelming. People who'd faced the same struggles she had, poverty, lack of access, systemic barriers, now had a place to turn. Scholarships were awarded, small businesses were funded, and slowly but surely the foundation became exactly what Roman had envisioned, a way to use the family's resources for genuine good. Dante never apologized, but he stopped actively interfering. Lucia told Elena privately that he'd been forced to accept that Roman wasn't going to bend, and that fighting a battle he'd already lost was pointless. He's a stubborn old man, Lucia said, but he's not stupid. He knows when to retreat. Elena and Roman found an apartment in Brooklyn, not the obvious choice for a DeLuca, but exactly what they wanted. It had exposed brick and big windows and enough space for both of them to work from home when needed. Elena insisted on paying half the rent, using money she'd saved from her increased salary, and Roman didn't argue. They fought sometimes, about money, about boundaries, about Roman's tendency to make plans without consulting her. But they worked through it, learning each other's edges and soft spots, figuring out how to build something together. 6 months after the board meeting, they hosted a celebration for the foundation's first major milestone, 25 students receiving full scholarships, 15 small businesses receiving startup funding, and partnerships with 12 community organizations across the city. The event was held at a hotel in Manhattan, elegant but not ostentatious. Elena's mother came, wearing a dress Elena had bought her and crying every 5 minutes from pride. Lucia came too, surveying the room with her sharp eyes and giving Elena a rare nod of approval. You've done well, the older woman said. Both of you. Thank you, Elena said. That means more than you know. I know exactly what it means. Lucia's expression softened slightly. Roman is a better man because of you. Don't let him forget that. I won't. Later that evening, after the speeches and celebrations, Elena found Roman on the balcony overlooking the city. He was alone, his tie loosened and his jacket discarded, looking out at the lights of Manhattan. Hey, she said, coming to stand beside him. Hey yourself. He pulled her close, his arm around her waist. Hell of a night. Hell of a 6 months. Yeah. He was quiet for a moment. Do you ever regret it? That day in my office when I pulled you into all this? Elena thought about it, really thought about it. The fear, the chaos, the media scrutiny, the threats, but also the growth, the love, the chance to build something meaningful. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. Do you? Not for a second. He turned to face her fully. I had a whole speech planned for tonight, something eloquent about what you mean to me, what we've built together. But standing here looking at you, all I can think is that you saved me. You did. From becoming exactly what my family expected. From choosing power over people, control over connection. You gave me a reason to be better, and then you gave me the tools to actually do it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena's breath caught. This isn't how I planned this, Roman said, his voice unsteady. I was going to wait, pick the perfect moment, make it romantic. But I realized something tonight. Every moment with you is the right moment. He opened the box, revealing a ring that was beautiful but not ostentatious, elegant, simple, exactly her style. Elena Morales, will you marry me? Not for strategy, not for appearances, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life building something real with you? Elena's vision blurred with tears. Yes. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and she kissed him while the city glittered below them, a witness to a promise that had started as a lie and become the truest thing in both their lives. When they pulled apart, both of them were crying. Real tears, messy and honest and human. We're going to have to tell your family, Elena said, laughing through tears. Let them find out on page 6, Roman said. I'm done caring what they think. But of course they told them properly. Lucia first, who smiled and said she'd been expecting this for months. Then Roman's siblings, who were surprised but genuinely happy. Even Dante, approached carefully at a family dinner, managed a stiff congratulation that might have been sincere. The wedding was 6 months later, small and intimate. Elena wore a dress she'd picked out herself. Simple, elegant, nothing like what Vivian would have chosen. Roman cried when she walked down the aisle, and Elena cried when he said his vows, and both of them laughed at the absurdity of it all. They'd started with a desperate kiss and a necessary lie. Now they were standing in front of the people who mattered, making promises they intended to keep. After the ceremony, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Elena leaned close to Roman and whispered, "Thank you." For what? For grabbing me that day. For making the worst decision of your life. He laughed, pulling her closer. Best decision of my life. That too. And it was. Against all odds, against every expectation, they'd taken something fake and made it real. They'd survived family politics and media scrutiny and their own fears and insecurities. They'd built something together, a foundation, a life, a love that was messy and complicated and entirely their own. Years later, when people asked how they met, Elena and Roman would share a look and smile. It's a long story, Elena would say. Started with a lie, Roman would add. Ended with the truth, Elena would finish. And that truth was this. Sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the most chaotic beginnings. Sometimes what looks like a mistake is actually fate disguised as chaos. Sometimes choosing yourself and choosing love is the bravest thing you can do. Elena had walked into that office expecting a job. She'd gotten an empire instead. Not one built on money or power or fear, but on something more valuable. Partnership, respect, and the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. The fake relationship that was supposed to last 3 months had become a lifetime. The lie had become their truth. And the dangerous kiss that started it all had become the foundation of something unbreakable. In the end, that was the real story. Not about a mafia boss and his assistant, but about two imperfect people who chose